Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to the first event of DevOps Institute India chapter, a roundtable with an amazing set of DevOps leaders. We are excited to have all of them in one place today, and thank you for taking out the time on a busy weekend. I know weekdays are getting crazier day after day, but taking out time on a weekend for us, I'm really thankful for you and the time that you have come up with. So the topic for this roundtable is indeed quite interesting: evolution of DevOps that we have witnessed over the last decade and where exactly it is headed in the coming one. So a quick introduction to our panelists today. Dheeraj, to begin with. He's the Global Community Ambassador at DevOps Institute and the region head for APG and MEA. Welcome, Dheeraj. Second is Suresh. He is the Managing Director of Top Solutions, and he is one of the key top 25 influencers in the space of ITSM. Welcome, Suresh.
Thanks,
Third
Saurabh.
is Avinash. He's the Vice President of Products at Digitenk. Welcome, Avinash. Fourth is Bhawna. Bhawna is also one of the Vice Presidents of HCL Technologies. Welcome, Bhawna. Uh, Fifth is Parveen. Parveen is the co-founder and director of VVNT Foundation. Hi, Parveen. And
Hey.
last one is Saurabh. Saurabh is one of the senior developer advocates for DigitalOcean APAC. And hello, Saurabh. Apart from our exciting panelists today, you have got your host as Aparna. Aparna is one of the senior managers for Capgemini India in the space of DevOps, and me, who is one of the subject matter architects for advanced technology solutions in Accenture. So in addition to this, we proudly represent DevOps Institute as global ambassadors with the core intention of humanizing this whole evolution. So having said that, let's begin our discussion today. So to begin with, DevOps adoption, the space of this evolution, what we see around, there is a lot of debate circling it, whether this speed is justified or is it over or under accelerated. Now, in the space of COVID that we are facing since last 1.5 years, or if I'm precisely, not correct, maybe 2 years, this crisis has brought about years of change in the way companies in all sectors and regions do business. New ways of working is one of the key points organizations are working to standardize their working models on. So to start on this, and this will begin from Avinash, from a change in model of delivering IT business point of view, what all are the key areas as per you where you see the organizations and leadership are focusing on this journey?
I think one of the key things that's really happening in this space is that people are adapting depending on the models that they follow, both in terms of what they are delivering in terms of IT business, and also how they are structured as a people. If you look at, for example, companies that work delivering fairly standard type of work, right? And there's also companies that rely a huge deal on innovation. So there'll be a difference in the way that these two companies move forward. One of the models that I like to use is that how do you structure your the people in your organization? Some companies structure them as crews, meaning people are replaceable. You're on a flight, an attendant calls in sick, another person just comes in and the flight continues as usual. The second one is work groups, where people come in and they're all experts in their respective fields. People come in together and work towards a certain outcome. And finally, you have crew teams, where people work extremely closely with each other, are bound by a common belief system. Crews are bound by a common process, work groups are bound by a shared context, and teams are bound by a shared belief. What I think is happening in the industry is that people who are structured as crews and work groups you're going to see a lot of remote working. People are even going to say that you can, just work from wherever you are to deliver IT services. But if you have to build true teams, there will still be a fair element of people having to come together. I don't think we've figured out the end state of that one as yet. But that's where you see this wide variation in various companies trying to adopt to the new model. In addition to that, there's one more item that I want to share, which is that the first wave of adoption, whether it be DevOps or anything else? There's just a comment here, so I'm going to, okay. So while this first wave of adoption really comes in, we see that the journey is still very clearly at the assist level. If you look at how the systems that we are building assist and then augment decision making and finally automate decision making. I think what has happened is that we've adopted DevOps, SRE, and a lot of that in the assist level. What I mean by that is we've focused on dashboards, we have focused on things which describe how the system is behaving currently. So to the question that Shantanu originally asked, which is that how do we see that changing? Is it going to accelerate? My thought is that yes, it's definitely going to accelerate, but the quality of the adoption is going to be very different because it will move from just the assist phase to the augment phase, where it will get richer. The things like, automated anomaly detection, for example, those are really things that will come in the augment and the automate phase.
Quite interesting, Avinash. That's a very great thought. Uh, and in terms of scoping this IT operations in specific of this whole evolution, what do you see as a significant change in the landscape of introducing these cultures of DevOps or evolving it into a model of NoOps or getting better with SRE in the last 1 year when you compare it with what it was done in the last 5 years? And maybe Suresh, you can start with that.
Sure. I think that's a good question. I love this term called NoOps, right? In fact, I was doing a workshop with another leader last week, and there is a buzz around NoOps, meaning everything will be automated. And that's one of the questions that Srinivas saying that NoOps. I said, first of all, the production support, the infrastructure operations is going to stay here, right? There is no, it's a pipeline dream and not a practical reality. So let's be very honest. It's like a pipe piper, you can lure people, but in reality, we still need all those people to support all of this stuff. So I've
Very
been
good explanation.
in my world, I was been in about 10 years in infrastructure operations, and I've done all this stuff. So even if you look at serverless architecture, move to microservices, Kubernetes, you name it, right? I like the point that Aparna mentioned about the things that you need to still have that human intelligence. Human intelligence is not just about understanding the context, but also the emotional aspect of it. I still remember calling up the service desk. It says press 1 for this, press 2 for this. I'm waiting to press 9 because I want someone on the other side to talk with me. I don't want missions. I hate missions,
Great.
right? So if this is going to be the trend that we see forward, I think no ops is something biggest solution in the history, right? So that is my first thing. Now, in terms of SRE, SRE again has transformed in a way much different from where we used to do service management, right? The way we used to look at incident problem change is now looking at differently. So SRE is kind of building on what we have already moved from Agile to DevOps to SRE. In fact, my lead author of the SRE practitioner course, Shivagami, says that SRE is the purest form of DevOps. She says that that is the most sophisticated word because everybody in the value chain will have to do it in a manner that nobody has even seen it before, right? Now, that's a tall task to ask. In my opinion, the production support team have got a new avatar in the form of an SRE. I mean, you have to hear me out. It's not the new Avengers, by the way. You will have to work hard to get to that aspect of understanding technology, coding, pipelines, and other stuff. But there is a good amount of interest for the erstwhile operations to evolve themselves into a new ways of working. And I think that is where the future is going to be transforming. So, I mean, I can talk for hours about this one, but to just keep it quiet, no ops is a misconception. We all will have jobs, so you can be eating and sleeping peacefully. That is one part. The second part is that we need to equip ourselves to move towards the site reliability engineering, because at the end of the day today, customer experience is governed by reliability, resilience. And that is only being possible when you have someone on the production support leading this whole effort. So that way, I think we are in a good state of operations, and the future of IT operations is in the safe hands.
That's a very interesting insight, Suresh. And to be quite candid, this is the most scariest part of everybody in operations. that you think of anything good happening with operations, maybe the whole automation cycle of it and introducing of AI to it and blending with, evolved SRE, there is a reluctance of having it in the, good phase because of the human fear. So that element is always there, and that's a wrong way of seeing it, because it's just to make things better for you and free up your creativity to make things more better day by day. So that's very wonderfully articulated, Suresh. And moving on
That's a
from
great
this.
quote from Shivgami. I'm
Mhm.
going to steal that for future use.
And we are
Yeah,
we are going to mark it.
no, it is. She's wonderful. I mean, you should see her. It's been a delight to work with her. I mean, she's one of the best in the industry on SRE. She would know end to end of that, and it's been. You should hear from her. She's such a thing. And next time, I think we should get her also, because she would have a lot more insight. So one request, Santanoo Aparna, is to get her involved, particularly also about the practitioner and stuff like that. She's got a lot of insights.
We have a pipeline event on SRE in the coming month, Suresh, and we are in track to approach her, and hopefully we will have her onboarded for our first meetup on a specific topic next month. So I'm keeping this recommendation and reference. I'll just requote it once I reach to her. But indeed, the
Absolutely.
practitioner course that we saw from DevOps Institute as the outline is one of the finely crafted certifications I've ever seen in this subject space. It's entire, I'll say kudos to the team who crafted it, and it's nothing that we have in any other space apart from the certification which matches this. Moving on from this subject and going back again to the organization models of working. So this hybrid model of work that we have seen, and this is specific to the COVID space, with COVID in place and people going remote and work from home model getting accelerated day by day. So is there an upward acceleration of how this collaboration is building up, and how our clients and the SIs, the system integrators, working together? And because of all these practices and processes in place, DevOps to be very specific, how do you think this hybrid model was more solidified year after year in the last 2 years? Because companies saw it proactively and they got into this model and now they are reaping out the benefit of it? Or is it something good to have, not must have now? Maybe this is a question for Bhavna to begin with.
Sure. Thanks, Shantanu, and thanks, Suresh and Avinash. I think this hybrid model is a new norm for not only today, I think for future also. Most of the IT organization think that this is a new norm. I totally agree with what Avinash said. There would definitely be a personal touch which will be required, but that will again be hybrid only. I don't think so ever, even post-COVID days also, this complete office and all will work. So hybrid actually is the new norm. But I really see, I think what this actually has led to the industry with hybrid and all, I think every organization today want to give a frictionless experience to employees. What did it's leading to? Actually, the knock-on effect of this is that every organization today is spending more and more on digital. They really want the adoption of this digital technologies and all in every organization is increasing. All customers are needing that. What it actually is leading to, a lot of more business to all of the IT industry, the type of collaboration between customers and organization, and the type of work and the amount of work which is today or is being anticipated for future is much, much, much higher. And every organization want digital, more and more digital tools, technologies and all to be implemented with a complete digital operations, real-time digital operation which is asked from every organization. And how this can be done, I personally feel DevOps, SRE or NoOps, all these words are there, a lot of has been implemented, but I think more and more this will become more reality for every organizations to run their operations. I totally agree with what Suresh said. No ops is a myth. We will never reach a stage where it will be no ops. But if you really see, the mantra for most of the organization will be less and less operation. So all of your activities or all more and more automation, let it be your self-service capability designing, including AI ML into your DevOps or AI ops or other things, lot and lot will keep adding, and organization will try to reduce their ops as much as possible. I totally agree. No operation will never happen. It will be only less operation. But the focus of every organization, let it be customers or for their own organization, people will try focusing on more and more digital business value things, not on the operation. So automation will happen a lot around the operations sphere, is what I feel.
Interesting point. And would you like to add on this, Saurabh, because you come from a space where co-innovation is something that you experience every day in, day out. So some more points to it?
Yeah, sure. So I think Bhawna has kind of summarized it really beautifully. And I agree to it based on the discussions that have been done in the past, right? So definitely hybrid model is something that we think is going to stay for the longer term. The only thing is, right now the situation is a bit different, right? So the way we foresee hybrid model is a different way. But then once I think things normalize, it might take some time. I was expecting 2021, but maybe it's maybe 2022 possibly. But then once we are back to what we used to call as normal, right? Hybrid model will be playing a big and major factor I'll not say DevOps in general, but the entire tech industry, right? It's going to be a revolutionizing change. And this is like a common discussion that we have with a lot of our peers. So something which was kind of unknown in some parts of the world. So definitely these kind of hybrid models were prevalent in, I'll say, the Western European countries, right? So basically US and other countries, but something never heard of or we never thought would be possible in a country like India. But now I think a good thing that I think as an outcome of this pandemic is these kind of solutions that have come up, right? And people have got that opportunity. They have realized the importance of these hybrid models. So I speak to my profile is like more of a solution engineering and a DevOps practitioner. So when we speak to a lot of customers, we see this acceptance coming from them, which was a kind of a thing which was not observed before. So if I say pre-pandemic, when I used to speak to customers, they were having offices, physical offices located, right? And they had a dedicated team based out of these locations. Now, with the hybrid model coming into picture, it's all like everyone is okay. I want to be remote. I want these kind of things. We are not bothered about what kind of workforce or what kind of locations we have. So there's no geographical, I'll say, boundaries as such. It's one global world where you just need some good internet connection and some other tools to collaborate, right? So I think, and that's the base of what we used to call as DevOps. When we talk about DevOps, collaboration across teams, and these could be cross-functional teams across the globe, is the key, and that is now happening. So I think that definitely this is something which I see as a great advantage for us, like working in our favor, is what my thought is.
Interesting point. Collaboration between teams is what we are trying to push up hard, day by day, month by month, year by year. And somehow this model of going remote has accelerated the thought or maybe the faith of doing work more productively by staying remote. So this is going up, and hopefully once we are back to business as usual days, people will not have, or maybe organizations who did not promote work from home completely will have certain level of faith in making this flexible model. And the whole space of tools and processes and practices which were going on in the implementation cycles, they have solidified the faith that yes, physical availability of champions or practitioners in the organization is not gonna justify your promotions or maybe your evolutions. It's gonna be what you do with these processes from wherever you are. So that model has given a good scope. And Avinash, any point to add?
Yeah, just want to make a quick observation. I'll keep it short. Is that a friend of mine joined a company recently. I used to work there many years ago, and there were some systems that were accessible only on the company LAN, and there were a lot of these processes. And now, when I was talking to my friend, he said that look, they sent me a link of approved models that I can buy, and they just reimburse me the cost, and then everything is accessible on the internet because everything's on secured public cloud. So companies have been forced to also reorient themselves to simplifying the entire access, because the option of come to the office and connect your machine to the LAN is simply no longer available. So I think that simplification is one of the very, very positive side effects of this entire thing.
Great point. And moving ahead on this same theme, so I'll move to Parveen because he is on this space where he has seen a lot of limitations on how exactly technology can bring in terms of this whole evolution. So when we talk about the evolution per se, Parveen, so moving from tool to tool, process to process, people to people, and so on, there are a lot of limitations which are not because of the systems in place, but because of the people consuming that space. So, what are the key limitations you have seen in this whole industry of evolution, and how do you, how did you mitigate or how did you approach to that kind of situation?
Right, right. So yeah, well, that's true. Today, there's a lot of focus on DevOps tools in the industry. Let it be configuration management, CI/CD, continuous development, continuous testing, continuous monitoring. There are so many open source commercial tools available, and innovation is going on. Truly speaking, DevOps is a buzzword, right? Everybody talks about it. Let it be leadership or developers or the operational team. But if we talk about DevOps as a culture, right, the culture part of it, that is a shared understanding between the developers and operations and the shared responsibility for the software that they build, you still see a lack of common vision and coordination issues in many organizations, right? So just to quote one example from my experience in one of the recent projects, our Azure PaaS migration application and infra teams were defining DevOps in their own way, separately in silos, right, for application and infra resources respectively. Now, how such a thing can ever be successful, right? In the same space, you are defining it separately. So you will see such kind of conflicts in different teams and lack of common understanding between the teams. This is where more focus is required to bring out the real DevOps culture. Now with the COVID situation and with new ways of working, it is becoming even more important for organizations to catch up on the DevOps transformation. I think this is here leadership can play an important role. So culture is important equally. Yeah.
And just to extend on this topic, maybe I'll move to Suresh. Suresh, any specific tooling limitation? Because the tools are getting better and better month by month. I still remember the time when I, was properly hands-on on this whole area where we used to have this hosting models of Git, and that nowadays is kind of obsolete. It's all GitLab, GitHub, and all these new tools catching up, and they are catching up so fast that they are now not, I'll say, a verb anymore or a tool anymore. They have become the noun of this whole technology. So the way these evolutions are happening, it used to be Jenkins a long back, but now it's GitLab, Entires, and I've seen good FSOs coming with these tools, and they are adopting to these tools very fast. So if you see maybe 3 to 4 years, the whole tooling set was different back, but now it's coming different. But the entire system of consuming these tools were the same or are the same, if I may put. So how from a learnability point of view, or maybe from a evolution point of view, everybody should consume these tools, and how exactly they can move ahead from that mindset to grow on these tools?
That's a great question, right? First of all, I start with the philosophy of tool chain, right? A fool with a tool is still a fool. Right? That's the premise in which you start, right? I'm not trying to negate the value of the tool, right? But if you don't know what the heck are we doing for the tool, then let's not do tool. That's a basic premise that we talk about. The other part of the problem is about the process itself is very complicated. So we need to adopt KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid, right? So if you don't simplify your process, then even you do automation, it's going to be bad automation, right? So that's the first. These are very few things that we need to keep in mind before we are talking about tool chain, pipelines. This is just about the starting point of our exercise, right? So understanding what are we trying to achieve as a part of a goal, simplifying the processes, that's the second part. The third part is every organization has got a center of excellence or an engineering team which approves a set of tool chain, right? Earlier, if you look at it, DevOps was focused on a single unified tool chain. That means whether you like it or not, you have to go with the same set of tools. This will not be possible at all in the future. And it is already happening here. In one of our Japanese client, that we are working, they are based in India. I mean, but it's a Japanese client. They have 70 different pipelines. I'm talking about 5 years before when we started DevOps journey. 70 different pipelines. They have an infra garage where people are testing this whole thing and to make sure that you are available. At the end of the day, the customer calls it, right? Whatever tools that they have got, you have to adopt it. We see a lot of managed services contracts today within the scope of Indian contingency, right? So the whole aspect is today there is no longer an option to restrict with a specific set of tool chains, because with technology, there's a lot of sophistication brought in the way we operate today. For example, let's take an example of App Dynamics and Dynatrace. They are ruling the world. Okay, AppD and Dynatrace is ruling the whole world in terms of infrastructure, application monitoring, infrastructure monitoring, combined with Elasticsearch and Grafana and Kibana. This is a kind of set people have seen it is working as part of my monitoring and observability to do that. So people who are comfortable in a certain way of working do not want to change games because the toolchain guys are asking us to change. They say, hell with you. I'm just going to do things which matter the most. But now, with squads coming into picture, people are allowing an option to be flexible for the squads to decide how they're going to implement that element. So there's a certain level of degree of governance that needs to be in place. But I think the people on the ground are too smart. They know exactly what works. They have a lot more holistic wisdom talking with other people, including like forums like this. That is how this change is happening much more disruptional than ever before. And I think, to be honest, we are in an interesting inflection point that the tools will make our life a lot more easier because they would have got the best of breeds over a period of time that will become much more efficient than what we are doing it today. So I think it's a very exciting time for people in the toolchain area because the gamut itself is changing. And like what we saw, the cost of data coming down, the level of features that we're going to get in the entire spectrum of a CI/CD pipeline is going to be phenomenally high. And that will help us to move faster, effective, to move from what I call as in operations term, from reactive to proactive to predictive service management. That's the world that we are all embarking in. So whatever you call as telemetry, observability, if you don't have tools in place, you cannot do that level of tracing. You cannot do to the level of logging analysis to do it. And because you need to rely more than monitoring of it. So I am excited about this space and looking at a lot of vendors like we're talking with Gremlin like tools for chaos engineering. Never ever we would have attempted in a financial space something called chaos engineering. We have a client of us who is explaining and exploring chaos engineering using Gremlin. So this is only possible because of the sophistication that tools are provided in the market. So that's my broader perspective of the different aspects that we are seeing in, and it is just a healthy competition. The more better you have, I always say that competitions breed quality. The more tools that you have a better option to pick and choose what will be appropriate for your existing system. And we need to be open. Today's technology might be obsolete tomorrow. So if you are open enough and embrace both those arms, I think we can do that. The last part I want to talk about upskilling. Now you cannot just run and learn all technology. So today it is Kubernetes, tomorrow it is something else. What I want to do is the fundamentals don't change. The way you move from on-prem to cloud, what have cloud aspect. Now we are talking about hybrid cloud. I mean, multi-cloud things. Everybody has got AWS, Azure, GCP. How do you work through that kind of a multi-cloud structure, right? So the question would be that you still have to have a bit of people on breadth and some people at depth. So together, and I like the word DevOps Institute portrayed an E-shaped skills, right? So you need to still have experience, expertise, and then bring it together. So that's where I think one of the biggest important need for organization is to look at a good upskilling journey. Because with the change in the technology and landscape, if I don't build a good upskilling program, you will not be able to sustain this whole journey. It's going to be chaotic. So that is where, in fact, with Dheeraj, when we are talking about a lot of these clients, they want to build an ecosystem, not for just today putting people into a training. I got the training and certificate to do that. They want a model which will be sustainable, where these people who undergo the different technology are able to put things into context and able to achieve that outcome. So that's my Long time hobby.
Wonderful summary, Suresh. There were very few soft spots which you touched on the tooling side, because we all are people who have evolved from tooling, and it's pretty much clear that the toolings are evolving very fast and very rapidly these days. But the whole path, or maybe the whole key of driving this, or the pace that you're driving it, remains on your hand. So, and the way we perceive these tools are changing day by day as well. Uh, Moving just slightly on a point to Avinash. So from an organizational structure point of view, it's something which Suresh touched upon. So we had this model of center of excellence where the whole evolution of tools were driven centrally. But then we also have divisional structures where the divisions are using separate tools. So keeping that kind of an enterprise setup in mind, let's say the recommended models of using a certain set of tooling is given by the COE, but the divisions are moving ahead and using something different. From that kind of a model, how do you think the divisions can do better by moving back to COE and proposing something new because of what they have seen, and how to amplify that kind of a practice?
Suresh made an important point that it used to be that these COEs used to prescribe to the organization that here's the set of tools. They say we are doing you a favor. We will actually allow you to use 3 different variants if you don't want to use this, but you have to stick within the 3. Part of what was driving that thinking really is that the way to efficient adoption of these tools was by standardizing them and then using procurement to obtain it for the organization at the lowest possible price, and then you sign up for 10,000 licenses or whatever. There's been a huge change away from that thinking, and that is being driven primarily because of this rate of change of tooling that we were just talking about. It simply does not make sense now for somebody to be able to sit and say that these are the 3 best in class, and then we're going to adopt them enterprise-wise, because the best in class will change in, let's say, 6 months to a year. So the fundamental role of the COE is changing from somebody who's the gatekeeper, who's really sitting in judgment and saying, here's the best for our organization and we'll take it over, to a very, very dynamic group that is constantly monitoring what is happening in the market and being able to suggest, bring in those new practices into the organization, and also think about how to bring it successfully into the organization. Because if you just let people do whatever they want, that's not a great thing either for your corporate security or for your corporate practices. But the COE's role becomes, how do they facilitate bringing in these to allow for innovation, rather than being somebody who prescribes the right way to do it.
Brilliant point, Avinash. And just in the interest of time, because I wanted to go back to Suresh and come back to you on this point, but just in the interest of time, this is never-ending discussion that we love to have. One of the key questions which I had, and this is one of the highly voted questions, Dheeraj, and coming to Dheeraj, with all going on in process, with all going on in tools, with all going on in the way people perceive all these, how is the culture catching up? What exactly are you seeing in terms of the blend that people are now? So we know, as per all the leading surveys, we know that people are becoming very, very open to consuming these tools. So somehow we had this mind of maybe in 2014 or 15, where no matter, so I come from a group where I've seen 15 to 18 people doing application builds day in, day out, the .NET builds, the Java builds, and that was their whole work profile. They were replaced by a single, tool called Jenkins. You don't need, so they had to evolve. These are the people who were slowly, or maybe who were a bit reluctant on this kind of adoption. But with the evolution, with the time, they are now friends of these tools. So in terms of what was happening maybe 2010 or 2005 to 2015 versus what's happening now in the way people perceive it 2015 to 20, and how it will be in the future, how do you see this whole culture element is catching up in the mindset of people, apart from everything else? It's a broader question, and Dheeraj, that's one of the key questions we had in the poll. So
Right, absolutely. And it's quite a fascinating journey, because I would concur with Avinash, Suresh, Saurabh with respect to all the points which were shared. Because what we have seen as part of the culture, and of course, one of the key elements has been upskilling around it. And everyone talks about automation from process platform perspective, but I think upskilling needs to be automated as well. So it does not mean that you need to learn with respect to switching to a hybrid learning or e-learning, but it's also about your mindset, how you are able to imbibe these emerging practices, these new technologies. And that needs to be quite consistent when we are talking about automation per se within the enterprise, because just this year we also launched the assessment of DevOps capability, which caters to that human aspects along with the process, along with the automation, along with all the set of tools which the enterprises imbibe as part of their transformation journey. So I think as part of the overall community transformation, which we have seen as part of the cultural movement, it has been quite fascinating to see the switch between dev and ops per se, because initially there were a lot of collaboration that was happening with respect to the focus from the enterprises side on the dev and ops community to bring them closer. But what they realized, and in fact, it is also being validated by various flagship events or various summits you go into, now the enterprises are switching back to the developers community. And why it is happening is because between the two communities, it has always been the developers community, which has the more weightage to drive this cultural change. So now the enterprises are realizing it, specifically in the last 1 or 2 years. And that's where the focus has gone more to the developers community to bring them a bit more ahead as part of this overall cultural transformation, so that everything is more consistent. So it's not about just the automation from the tool side, and also to add from the tools integration side. I think with respect to the overall pandemic effect which we've seen, what has also accelerated is the consolidation and integration between the tool vendors as well. I mean, just last 1 or 2 years, we have seen some really big mergers and acquisitions. I mean, talking about BMC, CompuWare, Progress and Chef, or SUSE and Rancher Labs. These are big brand names. And why it is happening? Because that's the community which we are talking about. Exactly the point which Suresh was mentioning about how you are able to keep it simple, how you are able to align with the expectations which your clients are saying. And that's where I think this cultural will keep on evolving, keeping all these aspects into mind and making it much, much more relevant for the entire community.
That's the golden kiss of life. The point Suresh made. Not, it's something we all echo. Very nice point, Dheeraj. Just to take this topic ahead in terms of this whole evolution, we have seen a lot of evolving aspects which comes along with this process. So security is one of the key parts. We have seen that terms like continuous integration and continuous deployment, these were the initial coiners, but eventually it became continuous testing, continuous security, continuous innovation, and somehow I've read it somewhere, I'm not sure if that's the topic at all, continuous everything. Okay, so every this whole element is coming up as we move ahead in this whole progress line. So from just a continuous security model point of view, can you define the continuous security for our audience, and how exactly is security everyone's job in terms of blending or integrating it with the tool stack? We'll start with Bhawna, and then maybe Saurabh you can take up.
I think continuous security is a new thing which everyone talks. Last few years, if I really talk, I'm part of a CIO organization. If I talk from my role is perspective itself, 5-7 years back, definitely security was one of our top priority. But was it one of the most top priority? No. Last few years, with all digital transformation and all, security has always been one of the key focus of any organization. But last 1 year, 1.5 years of this pandemic time, you really know how many cyber attacks percentage has increased. It is not, the increase is not 20%, 50%, it is almost 600% increase in the cyber attacks. A successful cyber attack with all the averages and what people have done is more than 7 to 8 million USD. and the kind of the reputation loss it has for most of the organization. Now the cyber security is something which is must, and from where DevSecOps, container security, a lot of such terms has come. What does it mean is security for everybody. It cannot be that security is an afterthought. The traditional method of security, let it be having a security on network, parameter, application end time, endpoint, data security, or having a regular penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, or a third-party assessment. This is something which will not suffice to current cybersecurity requirement. Somebody has to really bake in security, shift left as much as possible, shift left from the initial phase itself. I think the most important part to implement continuous security first is to train everyone in the organization. They should understand that security is everybody's responsibility. A developer should understand what the security means. Operations team should understand, and the security team should get embedded within these teams. In each phase of your development, let it be your requirement, let it be your design, let it be your coding, there are now tools which are available. When you do these days coding, there are a lot of tools which you are actually, which security testing is done by developer itself. You let it be static analysis, let it be CSA, let it be security assessment, a lot of stuff. In the design itself, there are many threat modeling, many kind of things which are available, which people take care from a design perspective. I think during build itself, there are many tools, let it be DAS, let it be many other tools which people are taking care. Many new technologies are coming from an application security perspective. I think a lot in the entire tool chain, right? From requirement to design to coding to deployment to the final operation also. Everywhere the tools will get embedded, and security will be the first and the topmost priority of most of the organizations. From an application security perspective, I definitely see that IS and RASP as one of the few things which will lead to more protection, more application security than normal vulnerability assessments or penetration testings, which we are doing these days.
Thanks, Bhawna. Saurabh, any further insights to add?
So yeah, maybe a couple of things. I think one thing which I completely agree is in the recent last few years, right? So maybe last 2 years or 3 years, we have seen a lot more focus on the security aspect being talked about, and people are kind of realizing the importance of it. So I remember this DevOps and all those things that we're trying to do nowadays, right? So it's relatively nothing new. We were doing in some form of shape earlier also, right? It's just that we have not coined them into CI/CD and DevOps and those kind of words. So if I remember correctly, I started doing something like DevOps and automation, what we typically call as 2013. And I was always wondering why security is the last in the queue, right? We talk about applications, we talk about production releases, everything, product, functionalities, users, all those things, but no one's talking about security, and security being on both the sides, right? As for you as like a company, you need security inbuilt within your applications and infrastructure, and also at the user level, right? So when you're interacting with users, if you're using some kind of a payment system, some kind of data that you're getting from users, both sides have to be big, and never that kind of a trust or importance was given. So what typically I used to feel was security as such, and when we talk about security, it has a lot of flavors to it, right? Be it at application level or like middleware, hardware, your infrastructure, your cloud security, those aspects to it. And now we have more different layers to it when we talk about things like Docker, right? So something like container security, which is a big issue. You talk about Kubernetes, everyone is trying to implement Kubernetes. So I remember last year I did this talk for CNCF around how to make your Kubernetes cluster secure. So there are a lot of CVEs that have been found in Kubernetes. And my first query to the audience was, do you know that you are trying to implement Kubernetes because everyone is doing it? You're trying to join that bandwagon. But your Kubernetes cluster that you are running, what version you are running, and is it secure? And they were like, no, this is the version. So definitely people want to implement security, but the awareness is not that clear, right? So somewhere what I feel is, in the past, we have treated security as a gatekeeper, right? It was always at the last and mostly being used as a gatekeeper. So it's not more of a reactive solution. Something happens or breaks in your system, and then you do an analysis and try to figure out, and maybe to prevent that kind of an issue, you just bake security over there. Now the shift has been done, and as Bhawna mentioned, there is a shift, left mentality coming into it, right? So people are becoming much more reactive and trying to like be a proactive and preventive into this. So in a nutshell, what I see is this DevSecOps or whatever we talk about security, this is moving from a gatekeeper level to a like an enabler level. So instead of being at the last, now we have security enabled at all the phases of your DevOps lifecycle. So be it your code repositories, or be it your CI/CD tool chain, be it your Ansible or deployment tool chains, or your monitoring solutions, right? End to end, the SRE. So starting from the code up to the monitoring side of it and the logging side of it, you need to have security baked into this. And this is a shift that we see. Somewhere what I feel is people still have that kind of awareness, but they do not have a clear visibility of how to implement it. And that is where I think initiatives from DevOps Institute and people like us, they come into picture, right? To help and guide them in the right direction. This is how you can bake and implement security within your DevOps pipeline or tool chain. So that's my take on security.
A valid point. Just a thought to add. I come from a sales background, and I know, the word USP we used a lot in all these implementations, a lot, and it was kind of ubiquitous with all the discussions we had. Somehow over time, one thing which and maybe it's a self-realization that I've done, that this whole word is not doing justice to the people to keep them motivated on the ground. And I've come up with my own word, and that's something I've been using extensively over the last few years, and that's UBP, the unique brag-worthy proposition. So what exactly are you doing in terms of an implementation which is brag-worthy enough? If you cannot brag your own implementation, your own evolution, you're not doing justice to what you're working on. So this whole evolution of moving to a journey of continuous everything, that justifies our hard work to make that happen. If you actually can make it, it's something you are creating. How can you not be better of what you are creating? So when you're doing this continuous monitoring, continuous security, day in, day out, and building up all these individual silos, eventually it's all your masterpieces, and you should be building it in such a way that you're kind of okay to brag about it. And when you brag about it, when people hear about it, they build something better. So that's how you accelerate this whole evolution. But just a closing point on this from Suresh, and maybe a quick one from Avinash and Dheeraj as well. Apart from security, what all do you think would be a key thing to look forward to in this whole blend of continuous everything model? Maybe Suresh, if you can start, and Avinash, if you can take it up.
So I wanted to get a little bit of spin of this whole thing, right? I'm just talking about a report of World Economic Forum about the top skills for 2030. And I think the first skill is critical thinking. I think we need to all develop critical thinking. Just because we have done certain things in certain way, you cannot continue to do the same thing again. So critical thinking will also include your challenging your status quo. Just because you did the certain ways, certain things, should we continue the same way to do it, right? That's a very important. The other important aspect that I've learned, and that's about unlearning and relearning. Now, a lot of times we are actually stoked in our own baggages because you have 20 plus years of experience on whatever we think that we have done a lot. But the moment you actually start to look at unlearning and relearning, that's a very important point. Now, Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, makes a point saying that at the age of 60, you should work for millennials because they're extremely smart. So that means you become obsolete at that time. You better give everybody an opportunity to learn and grow. And that's the only way that we can survive. And people who lose jobs today have just stuck to the quagmire of what they have done so far, and they want to continue. So until they break that stigma, learn, unlearn, and relearn, this is not going to be possible. And that is something which you has to be important ingredient for anybody in the value chain. It doesn't matter whether you're a developer, your tester, your operation guy, it doesn't matter. Today will be an ops guy, tomorrow it will be called by a different term. But that continuous learning curve and unlearning and relearning, and have an open mind saying that my cup is still empty, goes a long way in making this work. And this is forums like this helps, because you know how much of unconscious incompetency we have. And then we will probably be able to enable that over a period of time. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
The one thing I'd like to add to that is that we've forgotten, or we've decided not to communicate across our contexts. We all have our favorite contexts. And if you're a DevOps person, you assume that everybody understands your language and what is important to your context. I think that is one thing that is really underappreciated. If you really look at security, you look at DevOps, you look at Agile, a lot of development practices, each of these has developed their their own little bubbles where it's very obvious what the value is. It's very obvious what the value of DevOps is. It's very obvious what the value of security is. But the ability to be able to build bridges and unify all of these, I think, is going to be something which is absolutely going to be critical for success.
Great.
Great. Yeah. So let me take it. Thank you, Shantanu, and thanks for the wonderful points from Suresh on critical thinking and from yourself as well, Avinash. So I have this question again for Avinash for you now. Moving on to the challenges in adoption. So we've been talking about what we need, but with benefits of DevOps being so life-changing, any big size IT organization, the move to DevOps is not easy for the changes to be applied. It is a real transformation program that must be completely managed. Now, what do you see or have you seen in the last 1 year or in the last few years in terms of the challenges in adoption to DevOps in the real time? And how are they overcoming it?
Yes. So if you really, after this, I suggest that everybody Google why DevOps is failing. Right, just put that in, and you'll get tons and tons of material, all the way from reasonably learned studies that are saying 76% of DevOps initiatives are failing to deliver the value, etc. And then there is a bunch of prescriptions of what to do about it. But if you look at the root causes that a lot of them attributed to, it talks about the lack of top management support. It talks about the lack of education and tooling and things like that. But part of that really is from a business context. The business hasn't changed, right? Business leaders still are looking at only two metrics. They're looking at, did my cost go down or did my profitability or revenue go up? They literally aren't looking at anything else. And one of the things that I see a lot of organizations really struggling with is to be able to justify all the investments that they're making in DevOps teams, in DevOps tooling, in DevOps licenses, in constantly upgrading both the infrastructure as well as cloud spend on an ongoing basis. And then they go to their business every quarter, and the business says, okay, has my cost come down? Or has my profits or revenue gone up? If we are unable to translate what we do on the ground into these business metrics, then I think that becomes very difficult for any organization over a period of time. Because I think there's a broad recognition that DevOps and SRE are great things to have. But at the end of the day, companies are asking the question, okay, what is it really getting us? And it has to be something that is very clearly defined and quantifiable, whether we like it or not. Too many of us are still relying on the 4 original DORA metrics, or we are also assuming, to my previous point, that it's self-explanatory. Of course, DevOps is great, right? I mean, how can somebody not get that? But our ability to be able to communicate that both upwards and sideways, I think, is one way that organizations are understanding as a weakness. Hence those fancy numbers you get in DevOps initiatives not giving value. That's one thing. The second thing also is this very, very, and this is going to be controversial, underappreciated art of politics. And I don't mean politics in a negative way. It used to be said that politics is the art of the possible, but to create the coalitions in an organization, bring people on to be able to say that here's the shared scorecard that we will use in order to drive this change in the organization. That, I think, is something that is being recognized a great deal, is currently a barrier to success, but companies are understanding that, working on that, and hopefully it will give a much wider appreciation of the value that DevOps is bringing.
Perfect. That was a very nice term, underrated art of politics. Maybe I will do some more Googling on that to understand. But a quick thing on co-innovation model. So has it helped in accelerating the adoption? Maybe Bhawna, Saurabh, if you can talk on that, and Parveen also, based on your experiences.
as Avinash rightly said, who will not understand any organization individual? Everybody knows that DevOps is have great benefits, but when you start implementing, you have your own challenges. Co-innovation definitely will help us to adopt DevOps better and implement it better. What I've always said is what co-innovation means. Co-innovation usually is the different parties who are involved actually, they collaborate together, they co-define what is a business problem, how can you solve that, and what is a value proposition which will come out of it. The teams collaborate, coordinate, they co-create, they actually converge on a solution, they try to complement each other. That is what actually a co-innovation means. And I've always thought that if different teams, let it be your internal teams, let it be your partners, let it be customers, if they co-create something, anything which they have actually collaborated, they have actually co-created, they have converged into a common problem and a common solution for that, they have complemented each other, the output which will be is definitely much better and much accepted also everywhere. So it is very easy, faster to implement anything which is co-invented. I have always felt that co-invention is actually a shift left. From years, shift left has been talked. Initially, shift left was in operations from L3 to L2 to L1.5 or L1. Then shift left, we started talking about security, then privacy, then audits and governance. I personally feel co-invention is actually a shift left of all the destruction, all the disagreement or the conflicts which would have actually happened when you were trying to implement and adopt something. If you co-invent, then all that goes off. So whatever you have to do, all your issues and everything you define in the initial stage and come up with the one solution which is acceptable to everybody, very easy to adopt and implement.
Perfect. Adding to it, anything from your side, Parveen and Saurabh, based on your experiences?
Yeah, so talking about co-innovation, which Bhawna just mentioned, I think it is pretty much similar to what we have been doing, and companies have always appreciated the Kaizen culture, right? So you can think of Kaizen in DevOps to correlate it further, and if we work in that dimension, there will be everyday new things which can be done to improve further. And you can also correlate this with the, continuous everything model, where a lot of things are happening and new things are being added now. So we talked in this session a lot about the security and other perspective which you see, right? You can consider to standardize the tools which are being used in the organization. Leadership can support in that way. You can think about other perspectives, especially the evolving segments like automated continuous governance. Now, industry is also observing shift left on data privacy space, policy as code, testing of compliance is all happening in the pipeline. And this is all evolving space. Even if you talk about monitoring and observability space, there daily new things are coming up, and this segment is moving up to a new height now. So if I encourage more of a Kaizen in DevOps, I think that will add a lot of value. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Parveen. And I think we've covered a lot today in this topic, and respecting the time that we also have, with another just 3 more minutes to complete, probably I will now hand it over to Dheeraj, because this is now sponsored by DevOps Institute, and this being the first chapter that we are doing for the India. So what do our audience today, how can they get benefited staying with us in this journey? And what are your recommendations, maybe from the membership point of view, certifications? I think you are the first DevOps Institute ambassador all over the world. So I think you have the best words to say probably on this.
Thank you so much, Aparna. And I think a fantastic kickoff for the DevOps Institute official Skill Up chapter for India. And considering the vibrant community which we have in India, I think it will be going to be a great ride altogether of inviting more audience, making it as much as collaborative as possible. So With that note, I think we have spoken a lot and tremendous insights by all the leaders who have joined in today as part of the tech, the culture, the mindset, the upskilling. And that's where we want to keep it as simple as possible, because I think keeping it simple has been the theme of this talk as well. And that's where we want to say, like, every enterprise or every vendors try to pitch it with respect to creating your own pipeline or creating your own tool chain. And that's what we at DevOps Institute tend to communicate as part of our larger community with respect to creating your own upskilling journey. So there are various ways about what works for you. And as part of your own assessment, you know what works for you and what does not work for you. So it could be a membership in which you can engage with global audience, global members. It could be an assessment in which you are able to take it something back to your team or enterprises, or it could be certifications, trainings, which are being delivered by our registered education partners. And then there are different set of blogs, events, initiatives, webinars, everything which association does from the DevOps Institute side. So it's up to the audience, up to our members about what clicks for them, what entices them to remain on that continuous upskilling journey, continuous learning journey. And that's what we will keep doing as part of these initiatives. So currently we have around 16 chapters in almost 12 countries, and they are expanding quite fastly across the regions. So we would have some of the neighboring chapters also coming up. We also has various global chapters. So all the members which are part of Skill Up chapters, India can also join in the meetup group for other chapters as well. And thanks again to Srinivas, who is joining in from UK quite early his time to again getting something which he thinks works for him. So that's why we want to keep it as simple as possible. Whatever clicks for you, engage with us, engage with all the amazing DevOps Institute ambassadors which we have, which are also in this meetup, and make it as interactive and as engaging as possible.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dheeraj. And as a closing note, I think it was a lot of topics that we spoke about, starting from, I think I made quick notes of from NoOps to human intelligence. I like the term avatar of production support, and different definitions of DevOps, which every company follows, and finally not even knowing where they are going. And that's one of the key reasons for the failure of DevOps. Like what Avinash said, you Google it, each one has a definition because there's no single definition, but at the same time, not focusing on what exactly is your end goal, not having a vision. Has a lot of companies like GE, where they themselves have said that their digital transformation has not picked up to what they expected it to be. So DevOps is the new term today, is the in thing today. Everybody wants to have it, but I think without the culture and the mindset perspective baked in it, we will not be going to be a company which is going to be successful in that. So thanks everybody. And like Shantanu had just mentioned at the start, so the next exciting journey or the next session that we have on this meetup is going to be on SRE. And we are going to be doing it as an awareness session, followed by maybe a deep dive and transformational sessions. And probably we are trying to rope in people who have been the on-ground implementers of it, so that they talk about, if they have failed, what has been the reasons for their failures? If they have succeeded, what has picked up from their failure to success? I think that is going to be what we are going to focus on going forward in every other topic that we are going to pick up. And I'm really glad that I was able to do it along with Shantanu this session, and we want more participants like you participating and making it a smooth success. So thank you so much on a Saturday for being along with us. Great having you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and you have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.